Now we're talking about a soon-to-be Trojan, and this other guy, number 2, Jurrion Dickey, has some shades of a former Trojan that I'm going to bring up in a second. Currently number 2 in the class per 247 Sports. Menio Atherton in Palo Alto, California, 6'3", 210 pounds, currently committed to Oregon. Got to say, one thing I noticed right off the bat, his build, his size. He's built like some linebacker recruits. He already has that bulk added to his frame, which is very rare to see with some of these taller receivers. Isn't always necessarily the case. But the one thing that really popped with me when I was watching Dickey, guys, is that jump ball ability. Plays like a basketball player when the ball's in the air, just plucks the ball out of the air so easily. And that comp I was referring to, and Matt, as you're gonna get to know Ryan more. Ryan hates it when we force comps, but I'm gonna make one right now. I get a lot of.
I do it all the time. My bad, man. I'm just trying to give our viewers something. It's obviously
Matt, you have good comps. You're allowed.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ones.
To clarify,
because I got another one here.
Ryan approves of it as long as it's a good comp. He just doesn't like it when we force it. That's when, and he'll tell us.
That's fair. Yeah, I get that.
Ryan will definitely tell us when we force it. And so let's find out if I force this one, Ryan. I get a lot of Drake London when I watch him play. I get a ton of that when I see him because Drake London, former basketball player, was a basketball player at USC, comes on over and plays on the football team as well, and then full-time a football player. And those shades of basketball come right into his game, and that is what he is known for. That's what earned him a top 10 draft selection to the Atlanta Falcons this past year. And I'm starting to see a little bit of that with Junior Dickey, man. He takes the ball out of the air like he's going up for a rebound. Ryan, do you agree? No, maybe not.
Joe, that wasn't that bad, man. I thought I was going to be really upset about that. I thought you were about to throw like a Juju Schuster comp out there or something like that.
I was actually going to say Larry Fitzgerald. That's what I was thinking when I watched it.
I like that.
Sorry, Joe. I just won that.
Stole the thunder on that one.
Sorry, brother.
Well, Joe, what I love about it though, and what I love for both comps is the basketball thing that you kind of opened with, right? The backgrounds. When you look at Jurrion Dickey, he actually has a basketball background, right? Like he plays like that. I mean, he has a verified 78-inch wingspan with 33-inch arms on top of being 6'3", 210 pounds. And he's what I would call a springy athlete, right? Like he gets up, elevates, plucks the football at the highest point. So you can see that basketball background, man. The kid plays extremely, extremely big. And I think his straight line speed, I think, is solid. But what he has, though, in my opinion, is I think he's explosive in tight spaces, right? Like he can get on top of guys and he can use that incredible frame to really extend and pluck the football and win at the highest point at consistently across the board. So I like both comps, man, because like I said, this is a massive kid, basketball background, springy, wins in the air. Lot to like about Jurrion Dickey.
Now, I'm curious, too, like, is the lack of separation at the line of scrimmage because he's a two-way player, because he plays defense, and that's
good. And he's good on defense.
He's really good on defense. He absolutely is. Now, I don't know if he can play corner at the next level at his size, but yeah, that's where I kind of get curious about like what his true speed is, because I do see clips where it looks like he has fresh legs, and there is like a different level of acceleration and ability and power to his running. But then you see some other clips where you're like, all right, this dude is clearly tired. This is late in the game. They're throwing it up to their best player on play number 85 of the game for him when he's been on both sides of the football. So that's where I'm curious to see, kind of what happens to him when he gets more solidified on one side of the football. I honestly wonder, too, if he's one of those guys like, is he going to get to a college weight room and put on like 30 pounds and then become like a dominant tight end?
I was thinking that too.
It's always possible.
Like when I see him, I almost see like, dude, it might be in your best interest, Dickey. Like if you can go and win against linebackers on every play, like go and do that, because, at 6'3", 210, he already looks like he's 220. He might be doing the opposite of Branch, where he's like, no, I'm actually lighter than you think I am, so he's good route runner, high points the football ridiculously well, catches the football above his head. And yeah, I just thought that like his tracking was extremely, extremely high. Like I just thought that for a guy that size to be able to kind of put his foot in the ground, jump up, and just outreach every defender on the field, I thought was super impressive. So he is he's an exciting football player, and I'm curious to see kind of how it plays out for him at the next level.
I like the development talk that you kind of got into there, Matt, too, because not only does he play both sides of the football, and like you said, like, I mean, the kid's going to be tired at some point, right? So you might not see a consistent, like, what is his athletic upside on a snap-to-snap basis because he's just being overused a little bit.
Right.
It's also on the next level when he is just laser focused on one position and the nuance of that position. Maybe there is more looseness in the hips where maybe he could separate more as a route runner than we've seen on film at this point, right? So I think the nuance of the position and just the freshness of his ability as a athlete, I think is stuff that we should really keep an eye on, because this kid might be a better athlete than he consistently shows on film, just because he is given such a heavy workload on both sides of the ball.
Right. Like we know he's we know he's a good athlete. We know that. We definitely agree on the fact that we don't see the same explosion as we see Branch on the field. And I think that is because of the fact that he is playing two ways. I think it is that he has a high workload at the moment. But yeah, I think there is tremendous upside to this player. I think at the end of the day, he's a football player like a lot of the guys on this list. And anytime that you're adding good, well-rounded football players to your program, it's never a negative.
One thing I want to backtrack a little bit on what you said, Matt, about the tight end stuff. And I totally agree with that being on the table and being a possibility. And we consider what Dan Lanning is coming from at Georgia, who's now the head coach at the University of Oregon. That's a team and an offense that is very focused on tight ends to the point where they had 3 at the beginning of the season. Eric Gilbert may or may not still be a part of that team, where they had 3 really talented tight ends of different shapes and sizes and abilities. And now you have with Dickey heading to Oregon, albeit Lanning as a defensive coach, he's going to maybe carry over some of those philosophies, and you can understand him already doing that, carrying those things over, going after a big receiver like this. So maybe, heck, like you're talking about, Matt, I think that is 100% on the table for a guy like Dickey to develop into like a Kyle Pitts type tight end, where he's mostly a receiver, but is still slotted in as the Y in this offense, and is asked to be considered to be a tight end, but maybe not asked to block a whole lot. He's already got the strength. He's already got the baseline build to work his way into being 240 pounds. But do you guys agree that like that's
totally
more on the table than I think maybe some others might realize?
Totally. I think, the whole like tight end thing isn't what it was like 10, 15 years ago. Now, tight end just basically means that you're bigger than the rest of the receiver core, and we're just going to match you up against players that aren't on the same level as you that are covering you, and we expect you to be bigger than the safety that's covering you when you're throwing the football, and we expect you to outrun or juke the linebacker that's covering you. And that's something that, like, at the next level in college and in the pro is extremely important, because safeties are getting bigger and faster, and linebackers are getting smaller and faster. So it's one of those things where it's just like you need to find matchups wherever you can. Dickey's ability to catch the football is high level. Putting him against college linebackers, I think, is a matchup that favors in Oregon all the time, if he continues to develop as a route runner, because that's something too, again, with fresh legs, that's where I want to see the next development of his game. Just more dynamic route running ability, because of course we don't see it in high school. He's the best player on his team. Yep. Run straight, dude, and we're going to throw you the football. Like, that's literally what they're coaching him to do. Just run down there, and we're going to throw you the 50-50 football, because you're going to outjump this kid that's covering you. So at the next level, he's got to have to develop a little bit more feel on the field, route running, where he is in the zone, or how to separate versus man. Those will be the next, question marks for him as he develops.
Joe, don't you remember on Twitter a couple years ago when everyone was trying to have the debate of, is Kyle Pitts really a wide receiver or is he a tight end? And I'm just like, who cares? He's an offensive weapon. Like, it doesn't matter to me. You can call him a big slot. You can call him a boundary receiver. You can call him a tight end. I don't care what you call him. All I know is that Jurrion Dickey is going to make some plays on the next level and be a mismatch weapon.
Right. Well, not to distract this conversation too much, but it does matter a little bit, because Arthur Smith is currently using Kyle Pitts very incorrectly and asking him to block straight line.
All right, now hold on. That's another podcast. I know. That's another podcast. We don't get paid for that podcast, so we're not talking about it. All right.
That's a fair point. Matt, I wanted to ask you this before we transition to the next guy, Brandon Innes, on here. being a college quarterback and coming in as a freshman, we've got Dickey coming in with Dante Moore. They're part of the same class, and they're going to be developing chemistry. When you've got a player of this style who is you can trust in these 50-50 situations, and then on top of it, a guy that's in your recruiting class, like what does that mean? And like, how does that help with your development as a quarterback, having a guy like this in your arsenal?
I think it's just a great opportunity for both of them to build a rapport with each other extremely quickly. And they're going to be the 1-2 matchup that you see, early on in practice, whether they're playing or on the field immediately. It's like they're going to be the guys that are tearing up the first team defense on scout team. And then they're going to be the guys that just have that like great, connection in the spring game, just because the amount of time that they spend with each other on and off the field, and that's where their rapport is really going to just, play in their favor going forward. And, what a cool 1-2 combo for Oregon to get these football players. And I'm sure, Moore had a lot to do with the fact of, I don't know this for a fact, but like was Moore a reason why Dickey chose Oregon? Because, it would be for me, if I knew that I had a really good quarterback going to a school or vice versa, like I absolutely would be like, yeah, let's go there. Let's do this together, man. Let's take over the world and be, in Ducks legend history forever.
Well, that's why you always see quarterbacks kind of join recruiting classes kind of early on in the process, because they are like the gatekeeper to the recruiting class, right? It's like, all right, come on now. These are, and that's the best. That's one of the best recruiting tools, especially for wide receivers. And you actually see wide receivers usually kind of come to classes a little later in the process, usually because of that simple fact. They want to know who's throwing them the football. But I mean, Joe, what gets me excited about the Dante Moore Jurrion Dickey combination is a couple things that I loved about Dante Moore's game, I think really translate well to Jurrion Dickey. One's the back shoulder game. I think that's something that Dante Moore is going to be able to take advantage outside the numbers. And the other one is that Dante Moore is a really quick and smooth processor who gets the ball out quick. Like, I think that's something that with the size that a Jurrion Dickey has, like he's just going to uncover short, and they're going to have a lot of easy completions just with the length that he has and what he brings to the football field. So I really do love the combination of those two players together. I think that they work off of each other's strengths really well.
I know we're spending a lot of time on Dickey. Last question before we get to Ennis. Do we think that the Dante Moore and Dickey combo is the best that we have in this recruiting class? Because I know Malachi Nelson's a nice player and Branch is really freaking talented, who we just talked about. But right now, I see this on paper, and as we're talking about this, I think that this is easily the best pairing. I think like you put both these guys together, they're going to light it up in a couple of years when they're both starting.
Yeah, I mean, as the Samurai Master once said, we'll see. So, there's a lot of question marks out there. And listen, it's exciting on paper for sure. But yeah, for them to actually go out there and produce, that's a whole nother question. The ability that they have, the raw ability they have, there's definitely a lot of things that point in a positive direction for Oregon and for Dante Moore for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, Malachi Nelson and Zachariah Branch is a pretty dynamic and exciting combination
it is,
too.
yeah.
So it's
different though.
Yeah, very different to your point, Joe. But I agree that I think Dante Moore, Jurrion Dickey is going to be a really exciting combination. But I think we have a couple of those on the list, which makes it really exciting for the next level.
Interesting. Like, I just want to make this one point. The one thing is about USC, there's a little bit of a different, sex appeal to them, to where they could every year get like a transfer quarterback or the next 5-star where, like Nelson could be a fantastic quarterback, but he could be in one of those situations too, almost like Matt Castle, where it's like he's a great quarterback, but he keeps getting passed up by the guy that's younger or highly touted or has the better NIL deal. And yeah, Ryan, I know you kind of like that comp too a little bit, right? But it's just one of those things where it could be an interesting dynamic there, where I don't think Dante Moore has to be quite as concerned with that at Oregon, because it's not like every quarterback is knocking down the door to Oregon to go there. That's true.
And Bo Nix is out the door after this season too, hopefully. Finally. But
thankfully.
All right, guys. You guys are rough, man. Take it easy, man. He's the young man,
We say it in good jest. We're not.
Yeah, follow Joe on Twitter. Joe just like crushes guys on Twitter every weekend. It's actually really hilarious. I appreciate it, but
Ryan doesn't
Yeah.
like me on Twitter. That's a completely separate.
I
marital issue.
only comment on stuff on your stuff, Joe, when I disagree with you. So
And then you subtweet.
That's
me.
basically the main reason for Twitter. It's
yeah,
like,
that's also true.
that's the
Also
only
bother
thing
me.
people use Twitter for.